everyone, and welcome to a webinar as part of our leadership learning series. We want to make sure that these short webinars provide relevant information related to the pharmacy landscape, including hot topics, new clinical information, and updated information for you. So a little bit of introduction. My name is Ian Parnigoni. I'm a pharmacist and vice president of client services for Vital One. And being in the industry for almost 20 years now, I can tell you that pharmacy is always changing. I remember years ago now, we were talking about first specialty products at retail, then vaccine administration, Hep C products hit the market, then COVID, gene therapy. It seems like every 2 to 3 years, there's a shift in the topic of conversation. Currently, I'd say the main topics that are being talked about with my clients and consultants are GLP-1s, biosimilars, and oncology products. So I thought that for this series, we would talk through GLP-1s, current guidelines, effectiveness of those products, and anything that clients and consultants can do to really help control those costs. But before we get into that, we have a talented group of panelists with us today to help with that conversation. So for each of you on the phone, can you introduce yourselves to the group today? I guess we'll start with Azim, go to Angie, and then go to Paul.
Thank you very much, Ian. My name is Azim Bari. I am a pharmacist as well. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer here at Gateway Health Partners, and I look forward to this conversation talking about a very important topic that I know is near and dear to a lot of our hearts, and as well as an issue that our clients and consultants are facing today.
Hi, good morning. I'm Angie Oster, Chief Clinical Officer at Vital One. Like you, Ian, I've been in the industry a bit over 20 years now myself, first earning my Doctor of Pharmacy degree and completing my clinical residency at the University of Minnesota mHealth Fairview. We certainly have seen quite an evolution in pharmacy over the years, and I'm excited for our leadership series as well, especially for today's discussion around the GLP-1 receptor agonist and similar drugs.
Hi, my name is Paul Fischer. I am the Vital One Clinical Formulary Strategy Director and happy to be here to discuss all things GLP-1.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And again, look forward to the conversation today. I think the simplest place to start with everyone is talk through really what are GLP-1s, what are they approved to treat, and why we're in the situation we're in today. So I guess I'll start with Paul. Would you mind giving the group a quick intro into GLP-1s and basically what they're approved to treat and any really relevant information related to effectiveness of the products?
Sure. And for GLP-1s, we really have to go back quite a long ways. They've been around for quite some time, which would be surprising to many based on what they see on things like TikTok or Instagram with all of the social media storms surrounding GLP-1s. But when they first came out, they were an adjunct option, an add-on option for oral medications at the time. And that was back when even diabetics would balk at having to inject medications. And so the GLP-1s didn't really pick up steam for quite some time, unlike what most would believe with what we see nowadays with the frenzy surrounding them. So as time has gone on, those medications have moved from being an add-on to oral therapy, good old-fashioned standbys like metformin, to being first-line agents. And as they have been in the market, one of the things that pharma is good at is making use of things that they see that are happening in other clinical trials going on so that they can evolve the indications that these medications are labeled for. So with that, the biggest, most notable one was when people were taking the GLP-1s for diabetes, they noticed that they were getting weight loss. And so that has spurred the offshoot for all of the main drugs, that we see that are in the commercials most commonly nowadays, with having not only their diabetes version, but also their weight loss version. And so that's an important distinction that some people don't realize, that you can have the exact same medication that the FDA has labeled for diabetes and also only labeled for weight loss. Now, the pens and the way the boxes look might differ a little bit, and the strengths that they come in might differ. But at the end of the day, it's the same medication. So that's a very confusing point for a lot of people where, they talk about these drugs interchangeably when they talk about one manufacturer's weight loss version versus diabetes version. So it's been very interesting to see how there's also been other indications that have been added on, whether it be cardiovascular indications or sleep apnea indications. And the list goes on and on for what's currently being studied for additional indications for these medications.
Say, Ian, you also asked about what GLP-1 receptor agonists are and how they work. And I think that's definitely worth spending some time on. So they work by mimicking the effects of one of our naturally occurring hormones, glucagon-like peptide 1, hence the abbreviation GLP-1. It plays an important role in regulating both blood sugar levels and appetite. When we activate the GLP-1 receptors, insulin release is stimulated from the pancreas when the blood sugar levels are high, and it also suppresses glucagon release, both acting to lower those blood glucose levels. So as Paul mentioned, we started to see that the GLP-1 receptor agonists also slowed gastric emptying, which helped patients feel fuller and reduce their appetites, and all ultimately contributing to weight loss. And thus we see the expansion of the indications from just diabetes to start into weight loss and now beyond as well.
I think when you look at all the expansions of indication, that's one of the topics that I hear about the most. So we think about even sleep apnea being studied, right? We have MASH as another added treatment potentially. There's a whole lot of different diagnoses out there that they're looking into with these different products. And unfortunately, right, I think the cost is the cost for those products right now. But with the expansion, the utilization is what we really have to think about. How do we find ways to actually help curb that utilization? So I guess when you think about that and how it's also been this big social media uptake, there's been a lot of news coverage of these products, right? It's really expanded that utilization probably more than it should. Is there things that you find, or that I guess I'll ask the entire group, and maybe Angie, this one, maybe something that we pose to you, is there options that clients have, how they can manage these products? Not necessarily, I'd say, diabetes, although we can go down that road, but really thinking about the weight loss, because that's really kind of the biggest area that I see of utilization and change happening.
Yeah, absolutely. Our account management team here at Vital One is really well versed in the full spectrum of options that we accommodate for payers, which includes tailored benefit designs, standard and custom Vital One formularies, an integrated utilization management strategy, and of course, we recommend additional add-on solutions such as our care improvement program, and I'll get into that a little bit later, more in detail. But we're very open to vendor partnerships. For weight loss in particular, we're seeing some of our clients offering to cover maybe the generic weight loss medications or some of the traditional agents that Paul was referencing earlier. And then we've got other clients that go all the way to providing full benefit coverage for weight loss. And that includes these newer branded GLP-1 receptor agonists and similar drugs that we're talking about today. So clients can really elect to provide any level of coverage with their existing plan, or we've even seen some clients adding on the standalone benefits that come with dedicated medical spending accounts, for example. So as I mentioned, we're pretty open to creativity with our partners to do what we can to provide coverage for or curb the rising pharmacy costs that this new class of drug is bringing. It's really up to our clients and their desire to provide what they feel is a balanced approach to both coverage of and cost control of these drugs based on the budgets that they have to work with.
No, Angie, that's a good point. And I think that's a good differentiation when you think about clients that are on the market, whether they're fully insured versus self-funded, right? Being self-funded allows clients to elect exactly what drug classes are covered as part of their benefit, including weight loss. I mean, that's been a big conversation for me right now about taking the benefits of these products. A lot of employers actually want to cover them, but then being able to provide some options for them about the types of coverage they can have, limitations on coverage, changes in coverage, things that a client can actually elect to do, and then what that actually means for them from a financial perspective. So I think one of the other things that I think about when it comes to GLP-1s is the pipeline, right? There's lots of different products that are coming on the market, I think, in the not only new products for GLP-1s, but again, we talked about earlier, those expanded indications. So I'd ask, when you think about the big things that are changing with the pipeline, I guess either Angie or Azim, do you see a lot of new products coming out in the pipeline in the future? Or, and then if we can go into also some of the expanded indications that we're going to see as well.
Yeah, I can definitely start off, and then Angie and Paul, please feel free to jump in. But success breeds competition, and this has been an extremely successful drug class over the last couple of years, in particular. It's popular when you're hearing your relatives, your barber talking about these products, right? We have over 150 agents in the pipeline from over 70 different companies. 7 or 8 of these products that are in this GLP or weight loss space are near the finish line, meaning that they're phase 3 or have filed for approval. So we are going to get some competition outside of the current products from 2 manufacturers that are currently out there. And they will have some additional attributes that I feel will lend to additional competition and give them unique characteristics that may make them more popular for certain patients as well as for prescribers. I won't go through all of them, but I'll try to hit the highlights of some of the unique products that are coming down the pike in the near future that are in trial 3 or have registered for approval. The first one is a product that's already on the market, is the semaglutide, commonly known as Wegovy, Ozempic, and Rybelsus. They have applied for a weight loss indication for an oral product. They already have the indication for a diabetic product, but they're shooting for an indication at the end of this year for weight loss using an oral therapy, which despite the popularity of injectables like Ozempic and Wegovy, there's still a large subset of the population that doesn't like to inject themselves, even if it is on a weekly basis. So this may service them fairly well. The next product is another product from Novo Nordisk called CagriSema. It's a combination of GLP and an amylin. One of the unique trends we're seeing is they're taking all sorts of hormones and things that are naturally found in the body and combining them to see weight loss. And this is an example of that type of product. And this is a weekly injectable expected in 2026. The other ones I wanted to briefly mention was a product called retatrutide from Lilly. In our clinical space, we commonly hear this called the triple G because it impacts not only GLP-1 but also GIP as well as glucagon. It's an agonist for all 3 of those, and this will be a weekly injection. I note this one because this one made some waves earlier this year, late last year, because the trial showed that patients in the trial lost an average of about 25% of their body weight, which is phenomenal and superior to everything that's on the market today. So this is definitely a next generation product. But I do pose a question: does everyone really need 25% weight loss? Probably not. It is probably useful for a subset of the population, but not indicated for everyone. But it'll be interesting to see that one come out. It's targeted at 2027 approval date at this point. And then the last one I wanted to mention was a drug called Maritide from Amgen Pharmaceuticals. This is a GLP-1, GIP-1, similar to a Mounjaro or Zepbound. But what's unique here is it's being targeted as a monthly injection. A lot of folks found the convenience of weekly injections to be something that appealed to them in managing their weight loss or their diabetes. But now there's this product and also one from Viking Therapeutics that's being targeted as a monthly injection that patients can use to treat their obesity or overweight. So that one's being targeted for 2028. So I think there's a lot of interesting drugs in the pipeline that offer improved dosing, improved dosage forms for those that want to take oral as opposed to injectable. Just a real quick note here, I think a lot of those characteristics will determine which one of the products succeed in this marketplace over the next 5 years or so. But I think the other thing that will be important to see is to gauge all of these new products to see which ones are able to mitigate the side effects that we all hear about. One of the most common reasons for discontinuation of therapy is just that nausea, vomiting, malaise that people feel when they're on these therapies because of what they do. If we can have some of these new pipeline drugs mitigate some of those side effects and keep people on therapy and make it easy to stay on therapy, I think that may be another characteristic that helps provide a product that becomes popular and useful for both clinicians and patients.
Yeah, one other thing I would like to piggyback up with Zima, we're talking about the side effects, is that the biggest one that concerns me, outside of the GI issues with them, is the muscle loss. And that's something that isn't as widely discussed because people are so focused on getting the weight loss and seeing that accomplishment. But there's, even commercially marketed supplements now, and even one of the subscriptions I have to a weight loss video program, they have a video specific just for people that are on GLP-1 medications, a workout series for them. So the muscle loss, for me, being an avid, fitness enthusiast, that's concerning to me. There's, when I look at nutrition right now, there's kind of two divergent trends. There's the one where people are trying to get away from mainstream and moving towards, a more organic, natural foods, shopping from the perimeter of the grocery store style lifestyle. And then there's the other ones that are taking the more drug-based approach with doing things with the GLP-1 medications. So that's one thing that it concerns me with the medications that we have right now when it comes to that muscle wasting effect. But that was one of the things that a number of those products that Azim mentioned, those ones are much closer to being neutral in terms of the amount of muscle loss. Because right now, the ones that are currently on the market, it's about a 3-to-1 ratio. So that every 3 pounds of adipose tissue that you lose 1 pound of muscle. So that's a big concern for people, or it should be a big concern for people, and something that they need to be mindful of when they're taking those medications.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, are there any studies that are available actually against semaglutide, tirzepatide, and some of the other ones that are in phase 3? We think about the muscle wasting. I think that's an important piece to remember to talk about, right? It's not all weight is bad weight. I think people focus on the scale, right? When you look at your actual weight, but there's more to it. People don't always understand the background and the physiology behind what makes up that weight. So I guess are there any studies out there from the different manufacturers about their products or things related to muscle wasting or muscle mass?
Yeah, there is one product, Ian, that's in phase 2 right now with Eli Lilly. It's an IV therapy that's monoclonal antibody based by the name of bimagrumab. And it's one that's looking promising in terms of preventing muscle wasting. But obviously, intravenous route has its disadvantages. So we do have a detailed view of that in our pipeline document as well. That's posted on our LinkedIn page if anyone would like to learn more.
Yeah, and what I was going to mention is that is something that they've been much more mindful now of pointing out when they are showcasing their products, that they are looking at that muscle wasting as a part of their clinical trials now, in addition to the weight loss benefits.
Yeah, and I would just add one last point. When patients lose a tremendous amount of weight on some of these products, oftentimes they discontinue therapy. And to Paul's and Angie's point, once you've lost some muscle and you start to regain some of that fat and adipose tissue, it becomes harder to lose that weight again now that you don't have as much muscle. And that can be frustrating for patients that have to climb the mountain one more time. So I think that muscle wasting issue, as Paul mentioned, it is significant and definitely an issue. I'm hoping that the manufacturers can solve with this class so that patients stay on therapy, but if they do have to reinitiate therapy, the losing weight again will not be as difficult due to decreased muscle mass. Lastly, I just wanted to point out a little cheat sheet that I use to keep all of my pipeline drugs straight is a great chart that our friends at Vital One put out that I actually have printed and keep on the side of my desk. So I'm sure we can include a link to that as well, because it's a great aid and handy tool to keep all of this stuff straight. Like I said, there's a ton of these products coming out. Not all of them are worth noting, but it's a great aid to help keep focus on what the important products are in the pipeline.
Yeah, thank you, Azim. I can't tell you how flattering it is to hear that you've been able to gain so much value from the weight loss pipeline that my team and I created. As you can imagine, the information was curated from a plethora of various different sources, including pharmaceutical manufacturer press releases, shareholder meeting minutes, legal surveillance, clinical trial reviews, just to name a few of them. It was a time consuming effort, but was really important for us to assemble because we hadn't seen anything quite like it published. And you're absolutely welcome to use it. A few things I would add to your summary of our pipeline are these. You made a really great point about side effect tolerability. And for that reason, Novo Nordisk was trialing an oral cannabinoid receptor 1 antagonist by the name of monlunabant, but unfortunately it's been displaying neuropsychiatric side effects in trials. And then also Xeno Biosciences is taking another approach by researching an oral agent that mimics the same microbiome changes that are induced by gastric bypass surgery. There's not yet an estimated approval date on that one. But with all this, I would just remind folks that as soon as we published the pipeline, it was already out of date, given the time sensitive nature of its contents. So to bring everyone up to speed, there are a few updates I would make if I were publishing it now. It's important to note that the market did see results below what was expected for weight loss achievement with Novo's Kagrisema, and that was the combination cagrilintide and semaglutide. And therefore, there are some doubts about the future of that drug. With some of the disappointing early results for these different agents, we are seeing major manufacturers invest in partnerships to find differentiators that are more attractive to patients and payers alike. Additional oral drugs, drugs with better stability than those needing cold chain storage, better price to perceived value ratios. All the while, the current market is also still competing with compounded versions of these drugs in some cases.
Yeah. And I guess it goes back to think about that it's important for members who are taking these products to not only think about obviously being on the products, being adherent to them, but finding out ways to help manage their weight. So that way, at some point, when they're off of those drugs, or potentially if the drugs stop having the effect that they're supposed to be having, right, they transition off of those products and they can help maintain that weight. It's why I talk to people all the time that are on these products, right? It's not just about being the product and losing the weight. You want to make sure you go to the gym. You want to make sure you increase your fiber content. You want to make sure that you think about other things to make sure you're managing, one, side effects, but two, make sure you're maintaining that muscle mass, because that's what's lost a lot of time when patients are just on these products without doing those supplementary kind of things to make sure they're managing their lifestyle as well. I guess I'd ask the question thinking about that. And are there potential for clinical programs or things in the works to help members manage their weight or manage that process while they're on a GLP-1? Have we seen some of the manufacturers come out with support programs, or are there other things that are out there in the marketplace for clients to consider?
So, Ian, I can speak to one of those tools that we have here at Vital One. I kind of alluded to it earlier in the conversation. It's our Care Improvement Program. So, we do have a program that utilizes pharmacists to identify any potential stockpiling, which could be an adherence indicator. They also conduct enhanced clinical review processes, which includes direct communication with their providers. We outreach on any potential findings, and it comes with a guarantee where we also integrate social determinants of health. And that allows us to conduct those interviews on more of a targeted basis, very specific to the patient's needs. We also offer to the ability to integrate medical data as well, and that enhances our product even further.
Yeah, I think it's important when you think about outreach, right? With that program, we're taking our pharmacists internally, doing outreach directly to providers, right? So whether it be just doing the education level where we think about the disease state, or where we're identifying any adherence issues that are going on, right? We're going to make sure that that provider has that conversation with the member about that issue, right? A little different than we find with other PBMs and how they interact with members, and then they're really the intermediary. We're going directly with the providers and letting those providers have those conversations with members, which I think is really important to point out. And I guess from a management perspective too, are there other things that clients can consider or think about when it comes to managing that drug class? Is there anything that, as either strategies from, you think about managing the weight for those members, or when we think about managing from a clinical perspective the utilization of those products, is there anything on the marketplace or things that clients can consider doing with those drug classes?
Yeah, I can start. I can start this one off, and Angie and Paul, please feel free to jump in. Absolutely, I think some of the best tools are the tried and tested tools that we've used for a long time in the PBM space, and that's really things such as prior authorizations for this class. For diabetes, generally, just ensuring patients have the correct diagnosis. There's no contraindications. Fairly simple, nothing too complicated. But for weight loss, we have a healthy subset of clients out there that at this point still do not cover weight loss. So, they're excluding it, but a lot of them are hearing noise from their membership that they would like access to these therapies. So that even though we're talking about management strategies and keeping in mind there's a healthy subset of clients that don't cover them today, I think we're going to see pretty robust coverage for a lot of clients going forward just because of the demand. So as far as what strategies can we use in weight loss, absolutely. I think, ensuring that the patients, have they tried diet and exercise? Have they done everything that they're supposed to do before getting to the point of needing therapy? And then when they do require therapy with the GLP-1 for weight loss, are they meeting the indications in terms of the BMI cutoffs? Do they have the appropriate comorbid conditions that can alter those BMI cutoffs? I think documenting that and ensuring that the right patients are getting the right medications at the right time is absolutely paramount. Not to say that patients and physicians would knowingly try to get access to this medication for weight loss if they didn't qualify, but things like that do sometimes happen. So I think ensuring that we're getting these therapies in the hands of the right people is paramount and critical.
Yeah, I agree. And you think about the what clients are asking for. They want to make sure that there's options, and I think today we've outlined those options pretty clearly on what they can do. Right. I think end of the day, when you think about fully insured versus self-funded, again, self-funded clients have options when it comes to what they can do in certain drug classes, and we want to make sure that we present those to them. So whether it be formulary design, thinking about what we can offer from from a PBM perspective, when you think about the prior authorizations that are in place, making sure clients understand what's included, what's not included in that prior authorization, thinking about how they can actually manage those different drug classes. Diabetes may be a little more challenging, right? Because diabetes and the guidelines, right? GLP-1s have turned into kind of that primary treatment guideline when it comes to most diabetics. But I think where a lot of clients are going to have flexibilities in that weight loss space on what they can and cannot do.
And absolutely, Ian. And really to dovetail on what Angie and Paul had mentioned earlier, we have some great data that recently came out suggesting that patients that are the most adherent to GLP-1 therapies, getting through those side effects and then staying persistent with their therapy, were actually able to lower their overall healthcare costs by about 13% over the course of 2 years. But there was that caveat: the most adherent patients. So we want to ensure that we have appropriate controls in place in terms of prior authorizations, as I mentioned, but also marrying that with the programs that Angie spoke to ensure patients are taking their therapies, are adherent to their therapies, and we're able to ensure that, we're getting them through those side effects. But also, if there's a serious side effect, that they're having a conversation with the doctor, because there are some rare but serious side effects that patients do have to be cognizant of. But again, we need to get the right medications to the targeted patients and then keep them on that therapy so that the investment that their employers are making is coming to fruition in terms of lowering the overall medical costs for those people over the course of 2 years.
No, valid points. I mean, definitely thinking about um, the changes that are happening with GLP-1s, right? We started off with just, one when it first came out. There's been a few more on the market, right? Obviously, but do we think that in the future, all right, break out the crystal ball for a moment. Do you think that there's going to be shifts in the marketplace based on the pipeline, what's available from a program perspective? Do you think that there's going to be more options as we keep adding more indications, as we keep adding more products in the marketplace, and more options for clients about how they can manage those?
Yeah, I think it's going to be. So here's my crystal ball prediction: over the next 1 to 2 years, we'll have some relative stability around diabetes and weight loss. That can change, with a new study that gets released tomorrow, but that is my prediction. I think for diabetes and weight loss, we're going to start to see that market shake up in about 2 to 3 years when we have additional competition from different manufacturers launching products for these two initial indications. I think the real shakeup in the marketplace is going to come from new indications for existing products or for new indications for the current two manufacturers launching new indications with their current products. So just a very high level brief overview. We're expecting to see approvals for a couple of products in heart failure, for example, at the end of this year or in 2026. In 2026, we're also expecting to see approvals for patients with diabetes and peripheral artery disease, as well as patients that are obese and have osteoarthritis. In 2027, that's where things start to get really interesting. That's when we will potentially see therapies for diabetic retinopathy, which is a huge subset of the diabetic population, or hoping to lower that risk. But the one that really is interesting and keeps me up at night in terms of concern, but also in terms of hope, is a potential therapy for Alzheimer's disease in 2027. And then when we look beyond 2027, we have some other interesting indications out there as well. These drugs are being studied for Parkinson's disease, as well as alcohol and substance abuse disorders. Earlier or first generation GLP-1s didn't have very good results when looking at substance abuse disorders, but this current generation, what I call the stronger GLPs, like the Ozempics and Mounjaros of the world, have shown better data, interim data, in terms of improvement with alcohol and substance abuse. And then lastly, there's also, because it's used for substance abuse, alcohol and substance abuse disorders, it's also being studied for other addictive behaviors potentially. So that's, again, it's being studied for everything under the sun, but I think those are some of the notable indications that are coming down the pike that will really shake the market up a little bit. And some of these products will be available through the current two manufacturers, Lilly and Novo, but we have a slew of additional manufacturers making a multitude of products that are available in variable dosage forms and dosing regimens, which I think will, again, shake up the marketplace considerably in the next 2 to 3 years here.
Yeah, I guess I'd ask the other panelists as well. Azim, you mentioned that the potential Alzheimer's diagnosis keeps you up at night, right, for the added indications. With all the different added indications that are in the pipeline, right, I'd ask Angie and Paul the same question. Is there a single new indication that you're really focused on, thinking about? Yes, we have to think about management strategies and how we can either curb that, given some of the things that are out there, right? We know utilization may be considerably high for some of those new indications. Is there anything that keeps either one of you up at night from what you're seeing with GLP-1s in the future?
For me, I would say it's the one that's been a sleeping giant since, we look back to the hepatitis C pig in the python year 3 that we had a little over a decade ago. With NASH MASH, there by 2030, some say that the prevalence could be as high as 27 million people with the more severe form of MASH, which would warrant therapy on medication. And so that's one where, we could see another hockey stick type spike in terms of what we're seeing for utilization and spend in that class. Another thing to piggyback off of all of Azim's great points on the pipeline is that my crystal ball, I'm also seeing the chess game in terms of patent fencing with existing products where manufacturers are trying to extend the life cycle of that product, but then also adding on the indications for the newer products coming out, or adding the newer indications to the weight loss version of that product that's older in the life cycle. So that's something that we've seen that's happened with the two weight loss drugs that are the most popular right now, is that both of those major manufacturers have decided to add the additional indications primarily onto the weight loss version to try to gain market share and market acceptance and force the hand of employers who have the choice to put those drugs on their benefit or not. It makes that choice harder when they put those additional indications on the weight loss versions of those drugs. So that was one other thing that I wanted to toss onto all of Azim's other great points.
Yeah, and I would just say probably the aggregation of all of the above, honestly, Ian, with the expansion to cardiovascular disease and our understanding of how big a part of the population is suffering there, along with chronic kidney disease that very typically is comorbid with diabetes. There's just going to be an explosion with all the potential expansions, including folks that don't have those types of diseases. When we offer in, sleep apnea and Parkinson's disease, NASH indications, and substance abuse. It almost feels like it's going to be added to the water and everyone will require a GLP-1 agonist. So it'll be really important for managed care entities to take a good look, like Azim mentioned, in terms of making sure therapy is appropriate so that we're using these drugs both effectively, but also more importantly, safely as well. And so that clinical review process, P&T, full review by guidelines, that's all critically important as we assess the true value and future of these drugs.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think the biggest thing that, clients and consultants have asked for is just those options. So again, we think about the prior auth process, making sure that, as an organization that keeps on top of those products, right? Making sure that we're updating those guidelines, keeping up with the guidelines, making sure that we're following along when there are changes that are being made in the marketplace, which I think we do very well from a overall management perspective. I guess I'd ask the panel a kind of final question. Are there any other things related to GLP-1s that you think are going to be coming up and are important for our audience to know about? Whether it be thinking about changes in the marketplace or things that you want to get across related to management of these particular products and the options that they have.
Sure. The biggest one for me goes back to what you've spoke on numerous times, Ian, today, and that's employer choice. And, having the right partners surrounding you, helping advise to make the best decisions possible, because these are complex questions that employers need to answer in terms of how they're going to handle this and navigate the sea of moves that happen from a clinical guideline standpoint, as well as market pressure standpoint, and even the employees knocking on the door of HR. So that's what I see as one of the biggest and most important things that needs consideration going forward.
I would just add that we've been in a situation where we've had essentially a duopoly of two manufacturers making the most popular products. I am very optimistic that in the next 2 to 3 years we will see significant competition just because of the success that they have had. And hopefully with that competition, the marketplace will do what the marketplace does, and we'll have several products that become opportunities and options for clients in terms of coverage to treat not only diabetes and weight loss, but all of these new indications that we talked about today.
Yeah, and I think as Azim alluded to before, with that increased competition, we're even seeing manufacturers kick in funds to help out too. And I think that's going to be huge for some of the smaller employer groups who aren't able to afford these drugs. We're seeing some direct to consumer programs that I only expect to expand. I mentioned a little bit about cash card programs and medical spending subsidies that some employers are also offering, and that helps them manage their budget a bit better. They can provide a cap for coverage, and then they can still allow access, but maybe not break the bank by providing that full coverage at full cost. So a lot of creative solutions out there that are evolving, and it's exciting to see the competitive pipeline and how it's already changing the market.
Yeah, given the pipeline, the things we talked about today, right? I mean, I know I started this conversation saying pharmacy changes every 2 to 3 years, but maybe a little bit longer for the GLP-1 phase of this. But I guess with that, I just want to thank you all for listening and come back again for another episode of our Leadership Learning Series, and hope everyone has a great day.